gotta hit the record thing right now because if I don't, Angela, we'll talk for 45 minutes and I won't have anything recorded. Um, you know what? I think like this service is like there's such a feeling of hopelessness for
Right.
people, right? And it's just like I don't know what else to do. And unless they know that this is an alternative, right? Maybe it's not your first go to, but if traditional modalities aren't impacting and changing the course of your wellness journey,
Mhm.
well, fucking let's do something different.
Well, I think what's interesting is I think culturally, like historically, these ancient cultures, this is their first mo and only modality that they used to turn to. But nowadays, I would say just because of the climate, the political climate, the environment, all of the above, um, I wouldn't recommend it as your first go-to. I really don't think people are going to get as much out of it.
Right.
We honestly won't send somebody who's never done any type of therapy. I think we talked about this before,
Right.
that you need to have done some self-reflection, some introspective work and some self-reflection and
Right.
talk about because you're just not gonna get what you need out of the medicine if you don't know how to look introspectively and let go of control. And you aren't going to have any clue how to do that if you've never done any self-help work.
Right. 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 And this is not um this is after you've exhausted a lot of options.
For a lot of people, I think
Yeah.
that everyone that's come through us that's been successful has tried therapy, group therapy, one-on-one talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. Almost everyone has tried EMDR. And what's interesting about
Sure.
that one, that's like the go-to for trauma, which
Right.
works great if that works for you. Unfortunately, first responders, most of us have developed this wonderful coping mechanism called dissociation. And it is amazing when you're doing CPR on a 4-year-old. However, at some point, you're going to need to re-engage those emotions. And when you go into EMDR, I don't know how much you know about it, but for people
So
who don't,
I the whole
yeah, it's supposed to be like replicating REM
REM
sleep,
sleep, right.
processing left, right, while you're thinking about the event and holding on to the emotions. The problem is when I tried it, and I did what an intensive 4 or 5 days where we did like 5 hours a day of EMDR. And I just remember going numb. I remember at one point telling the therapist, can you leave the room? Just because I was having such a hard time holding on to the emotion and staying present and not checking out. And just her being in the room staring at me was making it harder to stay connected to the
Hmm.
event, and I just couldn't do it. So when you
Huh.
check out and you dissociate, you're not holding on to the emotion. You're not going to process it with the left and right stimulation, with the light or the little
Because you're
paddle.
not, yeah, because you're not in that moment.
No, like I could think about the event and I can tell you all the details, but emotionally, I am numb.
Huh.
Maybe even making a joke or two.
Right. Right. Um, I don't want you to assume that I know anything, okay? And that
Okay.
shouldn't be, that shouldn't, so like there's, Angela, there's no amount of explaining that you can do where I'm going to go. Of course,
Right.
Angela. I know I'm not that
Okay.
guy. All right. I'm not that guy.
Good.
Um, and
I
so
think I've
like,
gotten used to my little spiel and I realize I over explain it to people who already know. I don't need,
no, you see, don't worry
I'm used to
about
my
that.
explanation.
Don't worry about this is the other thing. The people that are listening, they don't, they're idiots. They're morons. They don't know,
He doesn't
right?
mean that. Everyone out there, he does not mean
No, I mean that in the nicest, most accurate way. Yeah, they're all really good intended, but they don't know. They don't know. Um, I'm not even gonna like listen. This is what we're gonna do. I'm just gonna roll into this. Like I'm gonna
that.
do a
Okay.
little introduction, like I'm doing. I'm not gonna use your last name if that's cool.
You can do whatever you want. I'm fully out
Okay.
there.
Oh, I know, but with the other with your compadre, and I don't want anybody drawing any connections or anything like that.
Whatever you like.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the SIREN project and the work, all the work that you're doing, and and then we'll just go from there. I got like 3 questions written down, and they're like, entry level, you know, John to being a moron 101, like who, what, when, where, why, like what's the deal? Because I think that's just the way I process things best. Simple.
That sounds good to
Cool.
me. I did take my Adderall today, so I should be
Look
able
at
to
you.
stay
You are gonna
on
be
topic.
super focused.
Well, the problem is in full disclosure, one of the symptoms of PTSD is you have some memory loss. I have trouble focusing,
Yeah.
and I'll be mid-conversation, mid-sentence, and I'm like, lost it. It's
Well, I
gone.
have no idea what I was talking about. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's
I have this
hysterical.
standoff with myself where I'm like, I am not leaving this room until I remember why I'm here.
What was it? What was well, if you want a little prodding and help, I'll make sure I don't zone out on you. All right.
Thanks, thanks.
Oh my God. Hey guys, welcome back to the Law Enforcement Life Coach Sometimes Heroes Need Help podcast. I'm sitting down with Angela. And so I got a chance to meet Angela over the Zoom thing because a first responder went and sought her and her company out because they were struggling with some PTS and just mental health issues. And Angela and her staff have founded the SIREN project. And it's an initiative that I'm gonna kind of just shoot from the hip, and then I want you to correct me because I know I'll jack it up a little bit. It's an initiative that serves first responders and introduces them to the options and the potential of plant medicine and different modalities to deal and address their trauma.
Pretty much.
Pretty much.
So people always say, what's SIREN stand for? Well, I had to make that word work for some reason.
I got it. I got
Yeah.
it. I got it. I
Supporting
wrote it
initial
down.
responders with entheogenic networking. And people go, what the
I'm
heck? And so
glad you said ethiogens because I was like, I'm not going to say that word right.
and I may not be saying that word right. And it's kind of a new word because of the connotation of quote psychedelics. It scares people.
Right.
And the PC friendly word is supposed to be plant medicine, but that's not all inclusive because
No.
we use 5-MeO DMT, which comes from the toad. It's not a
Toad.
plant. So
Right.
entheogenic is Latin words, and you can look up what the halves mean, but basically it's a nicer way of saying entheogenics that doesn't make people go 60s.
Uh, yeah, we've progressed a little bit from the naked orgies running around and going
Hopefully.
on a bad trip, right?
Yeah.
That's
Hopefully.
like but that's like we've kind of talking earlier, like when people start talking about psychedelics, uh, like the movie, like people's point of reference in their knowledge base is it's got nothing to do with reality, and it's got to do with what you know
100%.
grade B Hollywood bullshit movie they saw when they were teenagers, from
Right.
the 60s.
Right.
Um, and so like there's a huge pushback from
Very huge.
what do we want to call it? The established medical community? Is that like
Um,
where
no,
does the
because
pushback come from,
I
Angela?
think it comes from
Okay.
socially, legally is where I think it's coming from because there's an astonishing number of medical doctors and therapists. I would say most of the therapists I run into are like, yes, this works.
Oh,
I would
okay.
say most therapists you're going to talk to are going to be like, the research is there and it works. I would not say it's the medical community. I would say it's the government
Yeah,
and
the
just
government.
society in
Yeah.
general.
Well, because we're so quick to adopt new ways of doing things.
One retirement at a time.
Oh my God. Yeah. All right. So the medical community, well, because it is science based. I mean, so
100%.
like they're following the science, and maybe the law enforcement community, the regulation community, the FDA, the regulatory bodies, um, they're not willing to follow the science on that, I think.
I think
No?
it's really hard without people tuning out when you hear conspiracy theory. But I mean, if you look back to the psychedelic 60s, and there's some evidence to support that the whole war on drugs and psychedelic 60s was to demonize these medicines because people found peace and love and they didn't want to go to war. And they needed people to be drafted to go to war. And so they had to get rid of this culture that was very peace loving and anti-war. And that just kind of continued into, there are absolutely drugs out there that people really should stay away from if they value their mental and physical well-being, for
No
sure.
doubt. No
This
doubt.
is not one of them.
Right.
These are medicines. They have been used for thousands of years successfully and safely by the indigenous communities that have discovered them. We consider them the wisdom keepers. So they may not wear a white lab coat, they may not have a medical degree, but they're going to understand this medicine and what you need and how to get you through it better than a medical doctor in a white room with a lab coat and a clipboard.
Right. So let me ask you, um, and it's a very general ask. Why psychedelics? So we've got all these modalities, right? First,
Yep.
I'm a fan. So there's no gotcha stuff, but
Right.
we talked. There's the EMDR out there. There's talk therapy. There's I for a time worked with an organization called 220 that dealt basically, and I'm gonna explain it. You'll know exactly what it is. But you the disassociation where you view yourself viewing the
Oh, you're
incident.
like above yourself. It's a fantastic feeling when you need to not feel negative emotions.
Right. So like to train people in that kind of processing without having to talk about the trauma.
Mhm.
And so there are a bunch of modalities out there that can or cannot work for individuals.
Mhm.
Um, so before we get to psychedelics, we discussed like this isn't your go-to first thing out of the gate
No.
if you're having a hard time processing trauma. Talk to me about the steps one should be taking, and then we'll talk about why psychedelics, if that's cool.
Okay. Well, I think obviously if you're having mental health issues, one, good on you for recognizing that and that you need help.
Right.
Okay. So start right there. I would go to your therapist. Start with talk therapy because they are the most accessible trained professionals. Most first responders have access to free therapy to some
Sure.
extent. So you're going to go talk to somebody, and those professionals, hopefully, find a good one, is going to help you reflect on what you're feeling, what has brought you to this place, and
Mm-hmm.
help you kind of get a bearing on the origins of your emotions and how to navigate them. They may recommend SSRIs. I don't love those. There's a ton of side effects. I have my own opinions. However, there are people that are surviving day to day because of them. So I'm not going to knock that. If
So
that is your
so give me you threw out the acronym. You did exactly what I asked you not to do.
sorry. Come on, first responders, we live on acronyms. SSRIs are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So
Oh,
basically,
wait a minute. Wait, let's just wait. You thought for a second that I knew what that was. That's hysterical. All right, continue. Okay.
it's like Prozac, right?
Okay.
Antidepressant. Yeah. So most people are familiar with those. At least firefighters are because we deal with meds and patients pretty
Okay.
often.
Right. I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for some people,
So
uh,
that can be an off ramp.
for sure, for sure. Those are
Okay.
about 20 to 30% effective. So if you do talk therapy, so you're not a good therapist isn't just going to give you meds and send you on your happy way. You're going to have
Hopefully
to do in
not.
conjunction with talk therapy.
Sure.
And there's different types of talk therapy. There's cognitive behavioral therapy, there's cognitive processing therapy, there's EMDR, and there's specialists who are trained in EMDR.
Hmm.
There are a number of modalities. There's far more modalities available today than there was 20 years ago when I started.
Yeah.
And I'm throwing that number out there. It's kind of going into your next question, but I'm going to do it anyways.
Yeah.
So while you should go to a therapist and you should start this therapy and you should start to kind of sit back and recognize what are your emotions, when are your emotions, and where are they coming from?
Those last two like are crucial because without that, like
Yeah.
you don't know what can I say the trigger is? Like
Right.
what's the event that puts you back into
Right.
this mental crisis?
I think journaling is great. Well, I hate journaling and I don't like to do it very often. I think if you're just starting out, a mindfulness tool is journaling because that helps you reflect and kind of step back and go, how was I today? Rate myself, my depression, my anxiety. What was I doing when what did I eat? How was my sleep? All of these
Track
things
it.
factor in.
Like a workout book for your
Right.
mind.
I've had so many participants when we send them our welcome packet, and one of the mindfulness techniques is journaling, and they're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to write down. I go, write your thoughts. What are you angry about? What made you happy today? What are you grateful for? What did you eat? What did you do? How was your sleep? Just track it, and then you can find a pattern. You can
Yeah.
absolutely see a pattern. Like I found I dissociated most often when I wasn't stressed. It was almost like when I'm home alone and there's no triggers, no anything, I would dissociate and check out. It was almost like my body was like, cool, we don't have to function. We're just going to shut down. It was really interesting to see the pattern. And that's not true of everybody, but
Right.
that's why I document it. So, yes, first of all, recognize that maybe you need help, and that's not a bad thing that you're recognizing that. And then go get help with a therapist.
Right.
So then where do
I
you go?
noticed you mentioned um I might bounce around a little bit because I did not take Adderall, and so I'm having a hard time staying laser focused. Um, when somebody there's a whole application process to become a participant in one of these. Can I say like a retreat?
Yeah, we call them retreats.
Okay. And you said I was super impressed with the preparation, navigation, and integration workbook that you send out. It's like, hey,
You said
this
that very polished. Like
well,
you,
listen, can I'm gonna I have it up on my screen. So
that's awesome. I was like,
yeah.
wow, that's better than I don't do.
How did he do it? Professional, by the way, just in case you weren't wondering. Um, and I went through it all as if I was getting ready to go on this journey. And you got you've got to do the work.
Oh yeah.
This is no
People think
like
it's
I
a
think some
magic
people
cure.
think that this is like I'm gonna on Friday I'm gonna get your flight to Mexico. We got margaritas and cocktails at the by the pool at 3, and then I'm gonna get some psychedelics. I'm gonna go on a trip, and then I'm gonna wrap up the festivities with a pig roast and some hula dances, and then I'll be
Not like
back.
a frog.
God, it's just like it. This is, and I like what you said. Like this is an experience.
It is an absolute experience. So I'm going to try to get all my points out there. I have all my points like to hit.
Yeah,
So
please do.
yes, people, if you want to take an easy pill, then stick with Prozac or Wellbutrin
Mm.
or all of those pills. That is your take it easy pill. Like I just want to do this and function. What people don't realize the psychedelic medicines are a portal, and you have to do the work. You are going to heal you. Psychedelics
Ah,
are like 30 years 30 to 50 years of meditation compressed into 5 to 7 hours, depending on how long your journey is. And it
yeah.
really, because you can rewire your brain, you can create neuroplasticity and grow neurons in your brain and more pathways that are healthier through meditation. It just takes a ton of work to get
Okay,
there.
so
And this is like
this
on steroids.
accelerates that process.
This is meditation on steroids. So if
Mm.
you're not doing the work, it's kind of like they talk about
Oh, can I
changing.
use the analogy?
Yes.
It's like taking steroids and not working out.
Okay, I
You're
wasn't
not
seeing,
going to get
not see that coming, but
you're
yes,
not going to get bigger.
you got to do the work. You got to
You're
do the work.
putting them you're putting the medicine in your body, but you're not doing the work. So you're just going to stay the same.
Right. So,
I was addicted to steroids for a little bit,
oh,
so I've got to I know it's
then
hard to
gotta
tell now,
figure it
but
out.
yeah, yeah, that was
So
another journey. Yeah.
they talk about so psychedelics are kind of like shaking up the snow globe, right? So I'm gonna bounce around here, but
It's
bear with
okay, cool. I love it.
me. But so anyone who's just starting out on this, I'm going to recommend right off the bat to read, listen to, or watch How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan.
Okay.
He is like me, a square who's never done drugs in his life. And then all of a sudden he was like, I'm going to try this.
And I don't know that we even clarified this, but you were a firefighter.
I retired last year. I was a
Yeah, like
firefighter engineer hazmat specialist.
yeah, like you are the definition of a first responder. You are.
I know a lot of people always go, "Oh, is your husband a firefighter?" And you
Oh,
go, "No, no," because I
that's
have fire plates on my
hysterical.
car, and I'm like,
That's
"No,
no, I actually dragged him out of a burning building, and that's how we met.
no."
That's hysterical.
But he does call me on hazmat calls to,
Makes
hey,
sense.
that was my specialty, which I do miss, but back on track.
Yeah.
So, I totally forgot what we were talking
No,
about.
we would talk. We were talking. We were going to bounce around a little bit,
Yep.
and then we were talking about doing the work in the book that somebody needs to get.
Michael Pollan, I don't read. I don't like to sit still and read, so I listen on when I'm driving around,
Sure.
and they have a special on Netflix, like a documentary on about him and the book and him doing the writing.
Okay.
What I love about this book is you have a total square in his 60s or 70s that goes and tries all these medicines and then tells you about a little about the history and the cold and the science of how it actually works. So culturally, these are spiritual medicines, which is why you could never put it in a pill, right? And we'll get back to that later. So there's a
Yep.
spiritual aspect to it, but then there's I need the science. What mechanically, chemically is going on in my brain? And Michael
Sure.
Pollan really explains the default mode network very well. So, for example, when you walk, you not consciously think about moving your arms and your feet. You have muscle memory, right?
Right.
Your muscle memory lives in the neurons in your body, right? All those nerves in your muscles are telling your muscles to do what they need to. You have the exact same setup in your brain, and it's wired for how you think and your thoughts, right? You choose certain words and phrases constantly because it's part of your muscle memory. So, this default mode network is a muscle memory in your brain, and it communicates between your lizard brain and your prefrontal cortex. This is, I need to survive. This is logic. So when they're talking to each other throughout the day and you see a shadow, logic goes, nope, I'm good. Someone with PTSD goes, shadow, because they have a faulty wiring from trauma between the two in the communication. So you've developed this muscle memory to be afraid when you drive past that place that has a weird turn where someone died. And that's how you have the faulty wiring. So it takes a lot of work to rewire around that. And what psychedelics do, let's imagine you have a river and you drop a rock in the river and it's blocked, and you need to route around that now. That rock is trauma that has messed with your flow, and you need to build a healthy path around it. So they talk about psychedelics as shaking up the snow globe. You've made these tracks in the snow and you're going to roll back into those ruts. It's just easier to go back into the muscle memory
Okay.
and keep going through that way. You shake up the snow globe, you have the opportunity to create better pathways. And the way you do that is through gratitude. So you have about, according to Dr. Andrea Lucy, who runs our program, I can get into her details later. She's an amazing human being.
Sure.
You have about 70 to 80,000 thoughts a day. I don't know how they know this, but they do.
Okay.
And about 83 to 86% of those thoughts are negative. And that's muscle memory. You don't even notice that you're doing it, that, oh my gosh, she shouldn't be wearing that. Those little comments that come into your mind that you may not even be aware of, they have an impact on your mood and your perspective on life. What I like to tell people is gratitude is the antidepressant.
Mm.
Okay. So if you are having a hard day, hard time, take a breath, ground yourself, recognize in this present moment you are okay, and find something to be grateful for. And every time you catch yourself thinking something negative, find something to be grateful for. You're doing two things there. What you're doing is you're helping rewire the brain, kind of like if you have a Charles Barkley golf swing and you need to fix it, you're going to be super deliberate about how you swing the golf club until it becomes muscle memory. So you're going to maybe over exaggerate certain
Mm.
aspects to get it back on track. And it's the same thing with your mind. You may need to over exaggerate and really get into the gratefulness and really be mindful. And that's the second part of this is being aware of your thoughts and your body and your tension. And that's where the pre-work comes in and will help you through the medicine, because the example I like to give is how often are you sitting at your desk or wherever and you notice you're clenching your jaw or your shoulders are in your ears and you have tension or you're breathing more shallow, and all of a sudden you go, you take a breath and you relax it and you feel better. You know you do, but you're probably sitting there for 20 to 30 minutes completely unaware of the tension you're holding in your body. And that's what meditation, yoga,
Angela,
grinding
gra-
your teeth.
oh, so like not since I'll say even since I retired, fine. But I'd go to bed and this would happen.
Oh yeah. I've seen people with nail marks in their
I
hands. They're just,
and I'd go and I'd go like this. I'd intentionally extend my hands and I'd start thinking, it sounds silly, happy thoughts.
that is mindfulness. Anytime you're paying attention to your skin inward, your breath,
Mm,
your body, the tension you're holding, that is mindfulness. And the problem is most of us are unaware of anything going on into our body or going on with our body until we're really hurting, we're really stressed, we're really anxious or depressed. We don't notice any of the attention or the negative feelings early enough. And that's how you end up with anxiety attacks and depression is you had a one thing that happened at a one or a two. You didn't do breath work, gratitude, grounding, you didn't do anything to help it because you weren't aware it was there. Now you're at a six or a seven, and those tools aren't going to work very well because you were completely unaware that you were building up from that one trigger. When you meditate and journal and do breath work, it helps you tune back in and kind of turn on your self-awareness and
earlier in the process.
yeah, what you're doing, if you look at a MRI of your brain
Yeah.
throughout most of the day when you're just doing whatever, you're in the default mode network. When you meditate, you're using a totally different part of the brain more peripherally that you don't use as often. It's less conditioned. They say the neurons that fire together wire together, right? So you have like hardwired networks from your habits throughout the day. And the medicine helps you restructure those. You are literally rebuilding the neurons in your brain. And they said the monks that do meditation all the time, when you look at their brains, they actually have more folds. Like physically, the layout of the brain is changed from all of the
Oh,
meditation. And so the whole
the
point
different
of medicine,
rewiring and structuring of all those
yeah,
neural
they have
pathways.
more of those little wrinkles in their brain
Why?
because they've built more neurons. And that's the
Hmm.
science behind the medicine is it helps you build neurons. And if you do the pre-work and the post-work, you build healthier pathways with the neurons rather than going back into the rut because that's your muscle memory. You're gonna go
Hmm.
back to that if you don't keep up the work. And that's the other thing. It's not just work before to get through the medicine.
Hmm.
It's a lot of work to maintain it.
And so, a couple things I want to ask you about. Like you had said, like there's a simple, much simpler solution. You go to the doctor, do some talk therapy, and they'll give you some pills.
Right.
Um, obviously, people are like, yeah, no shit, John. Obviously, not a clinician, not strong knowledge base in any of that. But they make you feel good up until don't they? Isn't this the trap? Like it makes you feel good to the at a point, and then you're like, I feel good. I don't need to take it anymore. And then you're on this kind of this seesaw of being on, being off, being on, being off. Is that a problem with going
Possibly.
that road?
I don't know about that as much as I know most people need more and more and more to
Oh,
get the same
okay.
effect. And
Ah.
people that I know come off of it, which I've tried them, I didn't like the side effects.
Oh, so there's some side effects associated with those that are less than desirable.
And I would say if anybody's listening and you go to therapy and they want to give you meds and you want to try it, make sure they explicitly explain all the possible side effects. Because my therapist did not when I started. I took Prozac and Wellbutrin, and you have some pretty negative side effects. I'll just leave it there.
Yeah. It's like when you hear the commercial on the TV and there are 30 things listed and you go, why would somebody take this medicine?
Sure. Anal
Yeah.
leakage, possible death. Like, since when are those acceptable side effects?
Suicidal thoughts. Oh, wait a minute. So isn't
Yeah,
that the reason why I'm taking the medicine? To not
right.
have those thoughts?
Right. Well, and if anybody has kids, I'm throwing it out there, and your therapist wants to give your 14-year-old Prozac, you need to know that there's a high instance of, now I'm forgetting the word for it, but basically a lot of SSRIs can actually cause suicidal ideation. For some reason in teens, they have an inverse effect.
Hmm.
Um, And so I would not recommend SSRI. I'm not a clinician, but look at the
No,
stats.
this is and this is just a talk between two first responders that are trying to educate people about some other modalities that are out there.
Right. I would not, I mean, the stats out there
Right.
for teens on SSRIs are really scary for the potential for actually causing suicide.
And like you're dealing with a brain that hasn't fully developed yet. I mean, there's so many
24 to 25 is when your brain is finished developing. I
and
don't think you should be able to,
for men, I think that's 34 or 35. So I'm just
I honestly feel like you shouldn't be able to vote, buy a firearm, or drink until you're 25.
yeah.
You can't
Yeah.
rent a car. You cannot legally rent a car.
Yeah, yeah, but we're also going and fighting wars and taking lives, and so yeah, it's there's a whole bunch of hypocrisy and contradictions in the system.
Right.
Um, so we've got to do the work.
Yeah.
We've got to do the work. You've got this workbook that kind of outlines, and really, you should already be somewhat familiar with like there's a
The techniques or the
tech, yeah, just because again, if you go and you look that this is going to be, you know, all I got to do, I just got to take a pill and I just got to lick a toad and I got to, you know, inhale this, uh, all my problems are solved.
right. We make it very clear from the beginning.
Yeah.
That's not how this works. And we've had people drop out because they're like, oh, I have to stop drinking. Yeah. You have to get off caffeine. You have to
I
get off your
have to stop drinking.
They're like, no, I'm not going to stop drinking. And it's that's your priority. If that's where
Right.
you are not ready for this.
Angela, isn't it funny that just like if you want to be healthy, like there's no, everybody knows the things you should do to be healthy physically, maybe not mentally yet, right? But physically,
Newer.
we know that we know the basic kind of foods we should be eating.
Right.
We know we should be avoiding sugars and processed. We know all that. And we know that going for a walk, right, is better than sitting on the couch. And we know that, right? And we still have people morbidly obese,
60%. 60% of
dying,
America is
right?
overweight.
Passing these, um, passing what a lifestyle down to their children, and it's just we're doubling down, and so it sounds kind of shitty, but not everybody, not every. I get pissed when people play this victim. Oh, well, like fucking stop. Like if you're serious about getting well, not only are there a million resources, people in your corner that are willing to bend over backwards, but at the end of the day, you're the reason. It's you, your inability to to be disciplined, to do anything that truly matters to improve the quality of your life.
Take ownership. It's a victimized
Yeah.
mentality that drives me nuts. It's someone else's fault. It just doesn't work for me. I'm special in the sense
Oh,
that
I have to stop. Like, I have to stop drinking. I'm not doing that. Then fuck you. Stay fucked up.
on you. Yep.
Yeah, it's on you. And that's a frustrating thing is because we want to blame and point fingers and start blaming the profession and the things that we were exposed to, which nobody said, you know, we all volunteered for this job.
I'm coming back to that.
I'm sticking by it, lady. Um, and and now more than ever, I'll say this. Now more than ever, we know. We know the things that we need to be doing to cope with trauma and stress in a healthy way. We know
Right.
that. 30 years, I'm going to say 30 years ago, the guys didn't know. And so we just kept handing down techniques, getting shit faced,
Right.
not talking. That was the MO. That's what we did. That's how we coped.
Made jokes. You made jokes and
Yeah.
you had a crew. Well, for fire, I don't know about police, but fire has a crew that they bonded with and they made bad jokes. And I think they developed their own way of coping. It may not have been the best, but
Right.
here's a little statistic that
Please.
can go with that. So, Firefighter Behavioral Health Alliance, you can check them out. It takes 2 to 5 years to get all of the reports of suicide and then validate them. So, if you go and you look at the numbers right now, you might be like, oh, the numbers are getting better, bigger. No, they're not getting better.
No.
So, from the last 20 years, so they've been monitoring since 1887. Clearly, it's hard to get real data from 1800 something, right?
Of course.
So those numbers are whatever. But in that entire 100 and do the math for me.
Oh,
100,
listen, it's a
140
long,
years,
just say a long time, kid.
a long time, 135 years or
Yeah.
something like that. Um, they have over 1900, about 1900 suicide totals,
Right.
and 95% are in the last 20 years.
Right.
So
Right.
we can talk about the older guys and how maybe they didn't know how to eat right, exercise, and help themselves mentally, but yet I can tell you right now with the graph that I made, because I like graphs and visual things,
Right.
I will tell you that the graph, it doesn't do this, it does
So
this.
what you're saying is, if I can paraphrase it, I think this is where you're going with it, is that we were mentally more resilient with the fucked up ways we were dealing with it?
No, I think
No.
that I can tell you flat out that the average around 2001, 2, and 3 was about 20. And I want to say 2020, 21, we were up to 160 per year. So it's like 8 times. And it's not like it doesn't bounce around, it's a pretty steady incline. So why are suicides increasing over the last 20 years? I have a theory. I have zero data other than my little graph to prove it.
Right.
Um, I don't necessarily think it's that getting shit faced it makes you more resilient. I think I had way more access to therapy and modalities when I left than when I started my career. So we have more therapy. We have access to more
Right.
therapies, more
Okay.
modalities. EMDR became a thing, right?
Right. Yeah.
Have all this help. So why are suicides increasing?
I haven't. I want to hear your theory, and then I'll tell you mine. Because
Well,
go ahead.
so as far as fire, remember this is just fire. This is not people.
But I'm gonna, and I'll give you the law enforcement perspective.
Perfect. So, if you think about it, fire didn't start running EMS calls until about the 1960s. And it took a while to catch on for people to, oh, I call 911 for that. And then I would say 80s and 90s, we really started running more medical calls. Now,
Hmm.
if you look at the incident in LA, for example, populations have doubled, but the fire stations have not. They actually lost 8 of their 200 something, right?
Right.
So we haven't really increased the personnel on the line to respond to calls
Hmm.
in the last 20 years, but the call volume has gone up significantly because populations have doubled and tripled.
No
So I
doubt.
think you're having people exposed to more. And while you're saying it's not the job, this is going to kind of feed into that a little bit.
Right.
I think that you have firefighters specifically being and police, because I don't think their numbers have gone up either, even though the populations have increased.
Right.
I think that we're running more calls and we're exposed to more incidents. I think that our sleep is more disturbed, which is a huge endocrine disruptor.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Right. And so feeding into that, if you'll bear with me, I'm just finishing my certification for integrative nutrition. And what we're learning about is endocrine disruptors and the food that we eat in our diet, and how personally I got tested for testosterone and cortisol. And people are like, oh, cortisol is so bad. And my cortisol is so high. Well, guess what? When you have true post-traumatic stress and you're in constant fight or flight, you burn out your adrenal glands. So most people are about 12 to 14 on cortisol in the morning. I'm 1.4. I'm tired all the time. That absolutely has effect on your mood and your ability to
Quality
go.
of life.
It affects everything.
Right.
So exposure to carcinogens, lack of sleep, the stress of the job, all those things add up to not just, oh, I messed up and I saw something traumatic. No, it's physically, even if you do this work
Yep.
and you take the psychedelics and you fix your mind, it may still be very difficult for you to find pleasure in life and have energy and do stuff because physically, hormonally, you are jacked up.
Mm.
That's my long explanation for that.
I no. And there are. So this is what I'm gonna come back at you with. I agree with 90% of what you said. There's no, listen, we have for forever wore the lack of sleep as this badge of machismo.
Mhm.
I've been up for a day and a half. You're bragging about it. And we know that sleep repairs the brain, right? Neurologically in trouble if you miss 3 nights of adequate sleep. We
Right.
100%
Tons of studies.
responsible for obesity, cancers, Alzheimer's. I mean, they're across the board. When we want to go after somebody and destroy them mentally, the first thing we do is we sleep deprive them.
Right.
All right. But we do that voluntarily to ourselves.
Right.
And I say voluntarily to ourselves because this is where I shift firefighting. Listen, I could have been I'm a kid from Boston. My two options, I had three options: be a criminal, a firefighter, or a cop. Right. And I fucked up. I should have been a firefighter. I admit that fully. And with that being said, um, the jobs that we have, right? The ability to serve, take care of, protect, they all come at a cost.
Right.
But I think we, for the weak, for the weak minded and undisciplined, that's just the excuse that they need to not take ownership in their lives and do the hard work of staying fit and
Hmm.
staying fit mentally and physically and emotionally and spiritually, because all that takes work. So when somebody says, um, the reason why, you know, I am not performing at the level that I should be is because of the things that I've been exposed to and some of the things that you highlighted.
Mhm.
Um, the work conditions, the carcinogens, you know, shift work is the World Health Organization has identified shift work as a probable carcinogen, right?
Yeah.
Like, so we know all this. We
Mhm.
know all this. So it's incumbent upon you to take ownership of your health. And so you can blame, oh, you can list on a legal pad all the things. Don't care. You know, so it's incumbent upon you to take ownership. Um, and so like I mention Dr. Olivia Johnson to you, I think.
Did. Did.
Um, so like one of the first things she talks about in identifying factors in suicide. Now she did the Leo side of the house.
Okay.
She looked at suicide, does suicide autopsies, but just focuses on law enforcement.
Okay.
Um, and the first thing that she looks at on these 10 is relationships. Hear me out.
I am
So,
listening.
and this is, just tell me to shut up because this, I'm
No, no, no,
supposed to
no.
be
I
talking
want
to
to hear this
you.
part of you. I'm waiting for you to bring it full circle for me
I'm
because I'm
bringing
not
it
quite
full circle.
there.
I'm bringing it. I'm bringing it.
Okay.
Um, I could have used some Adderall. I would have gotten to this point so much quicker. Um, so in law enforcement, for every bad guy that kills one of us, 2 to 3 of us take our own lives.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I didn't listen, don't feel bad
I knew you
because
were 50% more likely to die by suicide than the general population.
so we've got that great statistic going for us. So for every bad guy that kills one of us, 2 to 3 of us take our own lives.
Mhm.
Of those 2 to 3, Angela, that take their own lives, half the times it's a result of a divorce.
Okay.
We as a profession, right? Because it's all about taking care of our brothers and sisters. You know
Right.
how much training we do on giving you the skill sets that you need to be a better spouse at home, to be a better parent, a better husband or wife.
Mhm.
It's not even a discussion.
Okay.
It's the number one reason why you don't go home. There are other factors. We're just looking at that one component. And
Mhm.
so
I
that's
can
the
speak to that.
okay, that's the known. I mean,
Right.
never mind talking about diet, nutrition, and life fact. There's a whole gamut of variables that play into this picture.
Mhm.
And when we don't take ownership of that, when we're not intentional, when we don't expose ourselves to the Dr. Gary Chapman and love languages, and we don't understand the dynamic and the things that we need to be doing, because we can become numb and indifferent. And if we're not taking an active role in that, then we're just allowing life to happen to us.
So what you're trying to say, if I'm
Please.
paraphrasing correctly,
Yes.
is if you're having issues and thinking of suicide and having divorces and taking it out on your family members, and you've done nothing to seek help and you're just accepting it's part of the job, then that's on you.
You get what you
Versus,
get.
well, I'm trying to figure out
See,
I
at some point, Angela, you got to take ownership for the decisions that you make.
absolutely, absolutely. However, I will say that oftentimes people who have maybe been through trauma as a kid and then brought it into the fire service, police service.
That's the majority of people in this
It is majority
profession.
of the people in this profession came into these professions with other traumas and shitty coping mechanisms for sure. I have worked with several first responders that don't take responsibility for their part in their healing and
Right.
haven't taken responsibility. I worked, you know, how many firefighters I worked with that were liabilities because they were a heart attack waiting to happen. If we went into a fire, I remember telling my captain at one point, "You're going to make me choose between you and a victim because I
Mm,
can't drag both of you out."
mm.
Like it's just kind of ridiculous. And
Same
he,
issue in law enforcement. People
yeah,
that when they show up on your scene, they're now part of the problem and not part of the solution.
exactly. And they always have excuses for why they can't lose weight and all that. And I have a hard time with that. And I have zero sympathy for that, even though oftentimes eating disorders are a result of a trauma response. And I think that's the key right there
Talk to me.
is you have a person who's having an issue. They have to recognize I have an issue that I need to fix. And it's not just I'm overweight and I need to work out and eat better. Why do I have such a hard time making sure I'm physically fit enough to come home to my family? Why is that so hard for me to commit to that? And that takes a lot of introspective work. So if you just have a general person who's like, yeah, I'm overweight because every other firefighter I worked with for the last 30 years, you get older, you get more tired. Like they just fall into the pattern of people before them and they may not even recognize, wow, I have a problem and I need help. So it may not be the victim of I can't. Is it more of a problem of ignorance?
Or a culture that doesn't hold you accountable because the members won't hold themselves accountable.
Yeah, I don't know. But I
Yeah,
do know that the younger generation, at least when I left, was much more conscious
mm,
of how they ate and how they worked out,
no
and
doubt.
all the work that our I want to say our SISM team, but it's not that anymore. Peer support team put
Sure.
into finding a place to send people to get treatment. Like there's a lot of awareness and a lot, like my department really did a great job. At least I should say my union body did a great job at trying to make resources available. Our training was proactive rather than reactive. Check in on people if you think they're not okay. Don't wait for them to come and ask for help, kind of a thing.
Right.
And sometimes it's like you have pride, right? So you're afraid to go ask for help, or if I ask for help, then I'm not tough enough, and maybe I'm not supposed to
Mm.
be here. And that could be a lot of it too, because
You
I
know what
can
I
tell
think it is?
what.
It's not even that, Angela. You know what it is? I think the role the organization plays, like you can't treat me like a liability when I raise my hand and say I need some help. That's the
Yeah,
bigger fear. Like you're not going to bust my balls if I'm
right,
going to,
for sure.
like we all have shit, right? We all have shit. And so that whole like I'm afraid of the stigma of my the guys I work, they don't give a shit. They want you to be the best version of you. They'll drive you to therapy. What happens is I got to worry about now. I've worked my ass off to be on this engine or in this role or on the SWAT team. And now I gotta admit that I'm struggling mentally with an issue. And see, in law enforcement, we'll hold that over you.
Oh, you will in fire too, because I can tell you personally,
Yeah.
I was afraid to let people know because as a woman in the fire service, like it or not, whether it was true or not, I always felt like I needed to do a little bit better to
Oh,
be considered
you better.
good.
You
That's
better.
how I felt. And
Yeah.
it probably wasn't true. I mean, I'm a
No,
sick,
it's true. No, you're absolutely same thing for women in law enforcement. You need to be better.
Well, and in my mind, I thought, gosh, if I tell anybody I'm
Mhm.
struggling, they're going to think, and you hear people say that, well, then maybe you're not meant for this job. Maybe. And I remember
Oh,
some guys saying
yeah,
that,
yeah. Well, that's it. You're abroad. You're not
you
cut
must
out
not be meant
for
for
it.
this job or
Yeah,
whatever. And I remember
right.
hearing the academy for one of the other females that was having trouble. Well, maybe this job just isn't for you. And you hear that in your head and you're like, you can't
You
ever let people
never,
think that.
yeah.
You can't ever. And I think what finally made me go get help is when
Oh
I
man.
realized I was ruining my son.
Mm.
Absolutely just dumping on him because I had a temper and I'd snap and I was a single mom and he had no safe haven from me. And
Oof.
I just realized I am
Like, did
ruining
that end up becoming your like your like your why of like why I got to get my shit
absolutely.
straight?
Absolutely. When I was like, I can't do this generational trauma thing to him. I can't keep passing it. And I probably am still fucking him up. Let's be honest. I'm doing the best I can. I'm doing better, but we're all gonna mess up our kids.
Show yourself some grace, kid. Show yourself some grace.
But that was my trigger. That was
Yeah.
my, okay, I don't care what people think anymore.
Mm.
I need to get right for him. He was my
Right.
why.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, I, I am. This is so we get off this road. I'm going to say this, and I'll give you the last word on this. I
You're a
see.
man right there.
I know. I'm sorry. We. I know. Fucking what an. Listen. You just. I am what I am. I'm like Popeye, only without the muscles. Um. If my fear is in this first responder profession, if we give you an inch, if we give you the slightest out, you'll take it in a bad way. I don't know.
And when
Bullshit.
you say that, you mean like the job causes stress and helps
And
you, and so
yes,
because
and
I feel
because
cool,
this
I
is
can let myself go.
it's out of my control, right? And because we're predisposed, everyone they wants to be the victim. They want the sympathy. They want the fucking guy who's walking around with all the regalia from back at. No, stop. I don't want to hear about your job. Then fucking do another job. Become a florist, right? Don't want to be the tip of the spear. And then when it comes to do tip of the spear shit, you play the victim because it's within all of us to take care of ourselves. And I think that if given the opportunity to blame and point, if that's the environment that we let exist, then that's what they'll do. Because it's fucking hard, man. It's hard to thrive and deal with your shit and be everything that everybody wants you to be and to love yourself and to love others unconditionally. It takes a shit ton of work. And
Yes,
I'm not ready to let them off the hook for that.
I get that. Now,
That's all.
here's
I'm
the
done.
difference.
That's all I'm gonna say. I'm sorry.
So I'm gonna retort.
Yes.
I I think this is the difference between a law enforcement officer and a firefighter. Right here. I think that you deal with people who have a million excuses. And in your career, they've shown studies, it can change your polar north for morals, right?
Right.
When you're around people who do bad things all the time, it can really change your perspective on people and who they are and what they're at the core. Now, I have dealt with a lot of first responders, police and fire, and
Yeah.
I can tell you I have off the top of my head maybe three that had the victim mentality because I would argue that right now, with all of the studies out there, you could easily have a culture of victimization because the proof is there with the lack of sleep and the carcinogens and what it does to your mood and your temper and the stress and all of that. The evidence is there to support anyone who wanted to be a victim and say, I am this way because of this job. That does not devoid them of their responsibility to get help. I think when you have all this evidence of, look at all this stuff that's making me so fucked up, I think that gives you an out to ask for help without fear of repercussion. Because, like me, I was so afraid of being judged
Yeah.
and I was so afraid of being outcast for being weak. But now I'm like, I am not weak. look at all this stuff. It doesn't mean I'm no longer responsible for my actions and my self-healing and my health. I'm absolutely responsible for that. But now I have all of these reasons why I'm not a baby. I'm
I
struggling
I
right
love
now.
I love
Here's
that.
all these reasons why I'm not a baby.
Right,
I'm valid in my struggle.
right.
I need to fix it, but I'm not just weak. I'm not having these issues because I'm weak. I'm having these issues because there are real physiological things going on in me. And these are reasons why it's okay to ask for help.
I love that. I love that as long as that you take it to the next
As
step.
long as you take, because I will tell you the two or three people off the top of my head, the victims of, oh, a week later you're still calling me in complete crisis. Did you do anything? Did you go for a walk? Did you like did well, no, I tried to walk the other day. Then I have no sympathy for you.
Mm,
Absolutely. You recognize you have a problem. I'm giving you tools and you don't take them, you're on your own.
yeah, I'm not. I'm not so naive to believe all those things that are contributing factors to lowering the quality of your life. They're all valid.
Right.
You got to take it to the next step. Then
It's on you.
let that be the platform that launches you.
You don't
But
get to sit there and be fat
no,
and
but see,
unhappy. You
but
need to do,
but with my own eyes, I see and I go,
oh yeah.
sad sack. Like this. You're doubling down that this is just the way it is.
No, and that drives me nuts. And I would say at
Yeah.
my apartment, the overweight thing makes it more obvious to me than just the mental health part. But like, I think the statistics right now that they were telling us were 60%, over 60% of Americans are overweight, over 30% are obese. And what makes it worse, back in 1970 something, the obesity rate or
Oh,
overweight
like
rate for kids,
15, like 15,
12,
12%.
12% of kids were overweight. Guess what it is now?
It's got to
34.
be 75.
34% are overweight. Like consider
Oh,
these are
those kids.
kids.
Oh, you go by the playgrounds. There's nobody in the playgrounds. They're all sitting at home on the couch playing
It's
Xbox.
become a cultural thing to
Yeah.
just overeat and make it easy. So that's a little off the topic, but you
It's
still need to
okay.
take
No,
care
it's a
of.
conversation.
I
Yeah.
think that as firefighters, a lot of us, maybe not all of us, speaking of the ones that a lot of us put work into working out and eating right and on our off days sleeping right and safety naps after lunch. But really,
Listen,
how much,
you got the recliners and all
yeah,
the
we do.
bullshit.
The ice cream
I
and the coffee
listen.
cup.
I am
Yeah.
so jealous, right? Yeah,
People wave at
somebody's
us with
cooking a
all their
great
fingers.
dinner, and you know what? I'm time to kick back.
Oh, we had like professional chefs. It wasn't bad. We
Oh,
great
oh,
chefs.
see you guys in Publix. I want to punch you in the mouth.
People buy us
Jealous.
pie.
I know. What's for dessert? What's for dessert?
But no, we put all this work, and even in academy, you put in all this work to educate yourself on how to be a firefighter, to work out, to be physically fit, to eat right. What are you doing every day to be mentally fit? And I don't,
Mm,
like you said, people are not as educated on this part. And
right.
I don't know why. I do know why, because people are ignorant. But I really wish some department would take a proactive effect, because an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? So why
Sure.
go to psychedelics 30 years after your career when in academy we can take an hour and talk about mindfulness techniques and breath work and coping mechanisms that are going to help you cope with your childhood trauma that you're bringing to the shit show.
Yeah. And how we incorporate that real time into our daily routine in our daily
Exactly.
lives.
Exactly.
Um,
You're going to get up early, like 5 minutes of meditation every night, doing some
right,
journaling, maybe before you work out, some breath
right,
work.
right,
Three things, bam, right there. It takes you less than 20 minutes
right.
total.
What's your gratitude exercise that you can do? Oh, I mean, like actually have them. It would not be,
It
and it
would
would,
take an hour out of every academy to
yeah,
run
and it
people
would be
through that.
so beneficial.
Yeah.
Again, uh, waiting till we're in crises, that's never the time to. I mean,
RMO.
and it's all. I guess the other thing that's so frustrating about all of this is it's preventable.
It is preventable. It is absolutely preventable. And I think that's what makes it so upsetting. And when I look back at, like, I have a block of about 10 years where I lost seven friends and family member, all but one were first responders.
Right.
And it's like this was absolutely preventable, because when you look at the studies on suicide, I remember there's a controversial whatever about the Golden Gate Bridge and putting up that fence, the anti-jump fence. You're like, oh, spending all the tax dollars. They're just going to go somewhere else and do it somewhere else. It's actually not true. They did a study back in World War II era, maybe 50s, just after World War II.
Okay.
Anyway, back in England, they had what they called, I think it was city gas, and people would go home and they'd, you know, lock the doors and turn on their oven and put their head in the oven and die by suicide. And as soon as they changed the gas to the natural gas, where you can't really do, they changed it to a different gas and you couldn't do that anymore, suicides were cut in half.
Hmm.
So the psychology behind suicide is you have the depression, you have the thought, and then you have to have the
A
opportunity,
means.
a means, because there are people who have jumped off of bridges, and the second that they were airborne, they regretted it. And how do we
Of
know? Because they
course. Right.
soon
Right.
as they
Right.
jumped, they regretted it. And I mean, there's people who've tried over and over again, and that's got to be depressing when you're like, I can't even successfully kill myself.
Right.
But statistically, when you take away a certain opportunity, you are taking, it's like the fire tetrahedron, right? Like you took a part out and you
Yeah.
really can reduce the risk of suicide. So
When
maybe
I
if
talk about that, right? I talk about that when I
Mhm,
present. Um, I say, listen, we all, when you're in the storm,
mhm,
when you're in the storm. You may not know what to do to get out of the storm, but when you're in it. And
mhm.
I tell all my cop brothers and sisters, when you're in this storm, lock that shit up. I go, because we're impulsive. I go, and so if you're having that thought, you having to walk to the safe, put the combination, you're trying to buy some time for you to realize that for to no longer be impulsive, to get some control back and go, oh shit, what am I doing?
And
That
it's a horrible thing to say, and it's a dark conversation that I think only
yeah,
first responders can stomach. But I have talked to first responders that were, I'm not a crisis counselor, and I'll tell them call 911, call 988 for sure.
yeah.
I go, but if you are having that thought and you're about to do it, take a breath and tell yourself, I can always do this tomorrow.
Hmm.
And it's a horrible thing to think,
No.
but if you tell someone who's about to do it, like, give me a minute, you can come back to this tomorrow.
Right,
If you still feel that way,
right,
go for a walk in nature, do some journaling, cry, have some chocolate. Seriously,
right.
like try all these things and then let's go through that. And you're just trying to buy time, right? You're
That's
trying,
it. Because it's a completely irrational thought. Your brain's
right?
not working. You don't
You're in
have
the moment,
a rational thought, amygdala hijack, all emotion,
right?
and your brain's lying to you at that moment, right?
Right.
And
Your
so it's
fault
about
mode network is fucked up.
yeah, it's about giving yourself some time to get out of that
Mhm.
storm in the moment.
And I think
Um,
one of my favorite tools, just for anybody listening, my go-to for me is I have two I've taught my son. One is grounding.
mm,
And what that is you sit still and you go through your five senses. Go through your whole body. What do you feel? What do you hear? What do you see around you? What do you smell? And what that does is that brings you to the present. That makes you right here, right now. You're not upset about something that happened. You're not worried about something that's going to happen. It takes the edge off and it makes you be right now. The
mm.
other one I make my son do when he loses his temper, and now he does it on his own, it's called box breathing. You breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for
Out for
4,
4.
hold for 4, and you do that 3 times.
Mm,
What that does is it makes you very aware of your breathing and it makes you slow it down, and your entire physiology is going to change in that 30 seconds.
right. Um, with that being said, your thoughts on doing addressing the physiology before the psychology, if you will.
Oh,
Like
like fixing your diet and your chemistry of your body.
diet, chemistry, exposure to sunlight, proper sleep, proper exercise. I so I can't take credit for any of that. I was listening to Andrew Huberman,
Mhm.
and he says you got to get your physiology. It's like building a house. Like
Well, that's why if you look at the welcome packet, that it tells you a lot about your diet, cleaning up your diet, getting rid of the caffeine, the
no
nicotine,
alcohol.
the alcohol, all of that is part of cleaning up your body, eating a healthy diet full of vegetables. Like when you look at your plate, and this is from an integrative nutritionist,
Nice.
almost.
Congratulations.
Thank you. What
Yes.
you should do is when you look at your plate, half of it should be veggies. A third should be maybe a grain, a healthy grain of some sort. And then the other side dish could be a protein, a lean, healthy protein of some sort. We need to start seeing, like, I love my bacon. I personally think that bacon is
I
proof that God loves us.
I will have a pound of bacon in my BLT. Yes.
I do love my bacon.
Yes.
Um, but it's culturally, it's the main dish, and we need to start seeing it as a side dish for a number of reasons. I still like it. I firmly believe in animal proteins for a lot of reasons.
Yes.
See it as a garnish of 3 to 4 ounces, and most of us will sit down and put down 8 to 10 ounces, no problem.
A pound doesn't even get me started.
I bet your
Yikes.
blood pressure and
Oh,
salt are
I,
through.
I
Well,
am, keto John. No sugar, no carbs, very limited carbs.
right.
And my numbers are
You're good.
phenomenal. Phenomenal.
You eat a lot of veggies because my fear about like the keto diet is not getting enough fiber. And
Yeah.
here's two issues with not having fiber.
Talk to
One,
me.
you don't poop. You may be constipated.
It's not, John Kelly does
Good.
not have a
Good.
problem in that area.
The second one is the number three killer of men is colon cancer.
Yeah.
And it is proven that a lack of fiber is linked to colon cancer because you need the fiber to feed your microbiome. The only thing, those good bacteria in your second brain that make all the chemicals
Right.
like serotonin and all those that happens in your gut.
Gut,
And it's
gut
going to
health.
happen if you have good bacteria. And guess how
Yeah.
you feed good bacteria? Fiber.
Fiber.
Only comes from fiber.
I am going to get an A plus plus in my report card for you, young lady, because
Okay, good. You're
I
getting
am
2 grams of fiber a day?
super. Everything's super dialed in. Really, I mean, uh, um, it's only taken me to 58 to get it all dialed in, pretty well. But I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people struggle. I mean, speaking of the health part, I'm a firm believer in the class I've taken are very vegan, vegetarian centered, and but they contradict each other. And I'm like, yep, so I'm calling them out for that. So I think I'm using
Right.
common sense in that no, our eyes are in front for depth perception and hunting, and we have incisors. While we may not have fangs, we are meant to eat meat,
Yeah.
regardless of what they think their studies say. I just think we need to not make it the center of our plate and think more like what kind of animals were we eating historically before we domesticated them? They were pretty lean. They
Right.
weren't super high fat, nicely marbled Wagyu ribeyes. They were pretty lean.
We don't know that for sure, though. I'm just saying. Just saying.
They may not have had the pork belly, but I've heard
Yeah. I'm just
so.
saying.
Uh,
You might be wrong
uh,
with that. I don't know.
I could be. I'm wrong a lot,
Hmm.
but I will say that yeah, fiber is important. I think a lot of people aren't getting enough fiber.
Right.
Hence, colon cancer is like the number 3 killer of men right now.
Which, um, so if we kind of tie this in, like getting your physiology right, right, like
Right. So getting your
this
diet
isn't
right,
this
so you can
isn't
feel good.
you can't not get your physiology right, have a shit diet, not take any of it, and then think that psychedelics are going to be the cure all.
Well, so it's kind of, I
Talk
want
to
to
me.
say symbiotic in
Okay.
the sense that like you can work out. Like I did a figure competition. I had my diet dialed and I was working out and I was probably the least happy I've ever been in my life.
Well,
And
yeah. Well, that's there's a whole nother that's a whole nother podcast and discussion
for
because
sure, for sure.
I did my first competition at 40.
Okay. Good for you. Good job. That's
Yeah.
that's rough.
Yeah,
Um,
well,
oh,
which also explains the steroid addiction and the destruction of my life at 37. So,
so what you should do, as well as everybody else. So one thing I want to mention is we're kind of try to do a study
mm,
to see testosterone level. In a perfect world, I want to test everyone's testosterone when they get in the fire service and then test it 10 and 15 and 20 years later. What we're seeing, especially among firefighters who suffer from depression and anxiety, is super low testosterone. Here's the funny thing. When you look back in the 1950s,
funny,
the
not funny.
average level of testosterone, what they said was the low, was like 6, 700. Now you can go as low as 200, and that's acceptable. Instead of recognizing there's an epidemic of dropping off testosterone levels across the board for men and
Right.
women, they just lowered the standard.
So well, they do. eh, yes. Um, it's about quality of life. And when your hormones are not in balance and you're not generating the hormones that you're supposed to,
Right.
um, that adds to the quality of life, mental health, emotional health.
And for anybody out there who's thinking, well, what does that really do? Postpartum depression. You have women who will kill their own children because they are so depressed from the lull and the drop that comes after giving birth. Hormones are a real deal. And the problem is when you're feeling that sad and you haven't done any sort of introspective work at all and you have no tools, you look for reasons to justify. I am sad because of this, this, and this,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm fat, I'm whatever it is,
Right.
instead of recognizing, oh, this is a hormonal thing, and then going from there. But that takes a lot of introspective work to recognize, oh, I'm not sad because of anything. I'm sad because of the hormones.
Ask
Yeah.
another question.
Yes.
So my wife doesn't want to be intimate with me back in her mid to late 30s.
Mhm.
Doesn't know, just no idea why. Not, it's not you, it's me. Oh,
Right.
oh, fucking tell me that again. It's not you, it's me. Tell me that again. That doesn't solve the problem.
Right.
Um, extremely sad. I
Mhm.
don't know what to do. I have an affair to make the situation better.
Which is common in our field.
So listen, um, she goes to a doctor, gets hormones tested because we finally had a tough conversation.
Mhm.
Fucking numbers were in the toilet. And next thing you know, she starts taking a little bit of medicine. She starts feeling a little bit better about herself.
Mhm.
And now she's starting to feel, she was feeling like shit because she gained so much weight. And now she's, like she could be a fucking figure model. She's
I want some of what she's taking.
50, she's 56, and she looks better than when she was 26. And she's emotional. I mean, we've been together for over 30 years. So we've seen each other and been with each other at our absolute best and worst. And but couples start going at each other's throats, and there's you can't find common ground because there's a complete hormone imbalance. And like, I don't know,
Takes
my wife,
logic right out of
she's
it.
acting fucking crazy. Like nothing, I can't have a rational conversation with her. And all these things, and it's got nothing to do with the intent or the will of the person. They can't physiology that they're jacked up.
It's messed up their perception of reality.
Yes.
You're doing this thing that's making me mad rather than, oh, there's a chemical. But that takes education and self-awareness. Like
And
that's
people
not
don't
something you
know.
come along.
No, you don't know. This is all in hindsight now. Do you understand? Like
Mhm.
this was like, holy shit. Um,
Mhm.
and
I think everyone should get tested. And the thing they teach you in EMT school, paramedic school, is treat the patient, not the number. So if you go into your general practitioner and
yeah,
they say your testosterone is fine, and you're like, I have zero sex drive and I'm tired all the time and my sleep is disturbed, you have low testosterone.
right,
Like, fuck the number and
right.
go find a naturopath.
Everything's relative to your person, your
Yeah.
body.
Yeah. Like everyone's number's a little different and they try to put everyone in a box and that may just not be where you belong. And
Right.
that's so irritating that a normal medical doctor is not going to treat you unless you come out of the box they've built for you and
Mm,
you recognize that no, you're having issues. What can I do naturally? There's lots of stuff you can do naturally. You can get pellets, you can do all kinds of stuff to help
sure.
your um but it will have a huge impact on how you feel and your confidence and your weight gain, weight loss, energy levels. And that's one of those things that's like you have to take responsibility for that rather than
Nobody's having that conversation though.
I am right now. We are right now.
Thank God it wasn't planned.
Yeah. Well, that's the great thing about
I
ADD. Like
know.
you never know where I'm gonna go.
I love it. I love it.
But
But no,
back to
it makes sense.
I want to bring it full circle. So you have the physical part of your body, right? So
Yeah.
you need to take care of yourself. You need to work out. When you work out and you do breath work and you go for a walk and you're doing a lot of mindfulness stuff, you're also improving your mood and your energy levels, which is going to improve your physiology, right? So it's symbiotic. When you fix one, it fixes the other, but you kind of have to try to fix both, I would say, at the same time. Don't just
Holistic approach, right? All at the same time.
whole body approach all the same time. Fix your diet, fix your exercise. That's going to make you feel better. It's going to help your endocrine system, up your fiber, lower the alcohol, the nicotine, the caffeine, for sure, all those stimulants. And just try to, the simple version I will give people is try to get 30 grams of fiber a day. Try to get half of your weight in ounces per water every day, and try to get every color of the rainbow on your plate as often as possible.
Hmm.
That's the simplest approach.
That's some
Try
great,
it.
easy to follow advice.
Yes. And the mindfulness, wake up 10 minutes early, do 5 minutes of meditation. Midday, when you're going to go work out, whatever your workout time is, do 5 minutes of Wim Hof breath work. That'll kick your ass if you're not ready for it. And then maybe at night before bed, 5 minutes of journaling. You've just done 15 minutes of mindfulness.
Mm,
Just make it
yeah.
part of your routine.
Yeah. And I think when you put it in those terms, look, 5 minutes 3 times a day, that's sustainable.
It is
Like if
absolutely
you
doable.
said, Angela says I got to do an hour of meditation, and I'm not doing that.
Exactly. And it's the same with working out. You get people who
Right.
are like, I can't. No, no, no. You can walk 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes on your lunch break, and 20 minutes when you get off work. Bam, you just did an hour of walking.
Yeah.
So don't
Which
tell
is
me you can't get
amazing.
it done.
It's just the benefits are
Really
in some
amazing.
studies more superior than actual running.
Yes. Because it's the mindfulness part. You're like most people when you run, you put in music and you're trying to check out because I'm sorry, but running fucking sucks. Although I
Mm,
miss it now that I can't do it. But the walking is enjoyable for most people, especially if you do it in nature. So it's a twofold. And miles are miles. Your body
right.
does not care if you do 3 half miles a day or a mile and a half at once. It's the same to your body.
No doubt. No doubt. Um, the listener got more than they were bargaining for on this episode. I want to highlight um, the Siren project and like expectations and like a general flow to what Rob we I spoke with Rob and his episode hasn't aired yet, but he gave me the like my luggage came off the plane. Like he gave me like the like ridiculous step-by-step details, but like just like a kind of a general overview on because the other thing we talked about was this isn't going to be the first option. Um, people, we've already kind of identified the things that people should be doing to mitigate some of the trauma and stress and anxiety that they have, because they may find relief. Because going through this, it's not fun.
It is not fun. I can tell you, I mean, I haven't actually died, but I'm pretty sure I know what it feels like to die, and it was scary as shit. When I did my 5-MeO journey, I just remember in the middle of it because I took several rounds and I remember crying before some of the rounds because it was so bad and so painful and so scary. But I just thought, fuck it, I've made it this far. I don't want to do this shit again. I just want to get what I need to get out of it and get through and get out. So I was trying to push through to get as much as I could because I didn't want to do it again. It is scary and hard and painful if you have control issues and you don't let go.
Hmm.
I almost said my significant other will tell you the opposite. He thought his toe journey was beautiful, but he doesn't have control issues. So, as far as
Hmm.
expectations going into the medicine, don't have any. Don't do research. Don't look up what people will say about their journeys because the medicine is not going to give you what you want. It's going to give you what it thinks you need. And that
Hmm.
sounds very hippy dippy, and it is until you try it and you're going to go, we are all connected and there is a higher power. And we've had people, lifelong atheists, who come out of this and they're like, no, there's a higher power. And it sounds granola, until you try it and you're like, oh, now I get it.
Right.
So, walking you through the process, we try to contact people about 2 months beforehand to make sure you're on track to know what your date is and to start the process of cleaning up your diet and mindfulness.
And we're
I
doing that a minimum of 2 months out.
minimum 2 months out. I tell people when they apply, start now. You may be a year out, but we have people that drop for a number of reasons. And if you only get a month, you want to get the most out of your medicine. So there's really no reason because everything you're doing to prepare yourself is still going to help you. If you are having trouble mentally
Right, right.
before you get to the
There's
medicine,
another benefit. If you don't
yeah,
ever go on this retreat, you're still going to be a better version of
you're
you.
gonna get benefits out of it. And for those people that are like on the fence and they're like they're emergent, and I'm like, okay, start this medicine now, start these practices now, clean up your diet, do all this stuff now to prep because really you should be doing all this stuff every day anyways. And you need it to be
Right,
part of your habit. So when you have the wet paint and the wet clay and you're rewiring, it's a habit to do it all so you get the most out of the medicine. So I try to contact 2 months before, roster them. You go down for 5 days. We stay at a house that we rent. I think our facilitator is buying a facility now, so we're gonna have our own facility in
mm,
Mexico. Several reasons we do it in Mexico. This is where the medicine originated from, and the people who serve the medicine will tell you there's a spiritual aspect to doing the medicine in the place where it's from. It is very indigenously respectful, it's authentic, and it's a spiritual experience. So you may have to take a breath and a grain of salt if you are highly religious.
mm,
Um, in other aspects, and just recognize that this culture has used these medicines safely and successfully for thousands of years to heal people. So, there are ceremonies, not just we give you the medicine. And what you're going to find is for the medicine to work effectively, you're going to hear a term called set and setting. It's the mindset you have going into it and the setting you're in that makes it medicinal versus you're out in the woods with your buddies doing shrooms. That is
mm.
the total difference. And if you've ever done a lot of shrooms and then you do it medicinally, you're going to go, oh, yeah, that's totally different because your mindset going in is, I'm doing this with a group of people and we've been putting work into this and we're going to heal it. And the other part of going to Mexico is it becomes part of the pilgrimage. It's helping with the mindset, right? And the
Right,
setting. You're in the setting. We're in a safe place. We make sure that you're safe. We have some still Team 6 guys that are there to make sure you don't try to jump off a bridge or anything crazy on mushrooms.
right.
And because that happens. And so we make sure that you are safe. Your setting is safe and tranquil, and we take care of you. And then you do the psilocybin as a group the first day of medicine, and then the second day you do the toad one-on-one, and we usually smoke that. And those usually last 15 minutes to an hour, depending on your journey. The psilocybin is going to be 4 to 7 hours, just depending on who you are. And throughout the whole retreat, you don't just take medicine. We are coming together as a group and we are talking about things we've been through and issues we're having. And then we do mindfulness techniques and yoga and breath work. And we add in all the tools that you should have been doing and you better keep doing after the
Right.
medicine, because again, this is just meditation on steroids. So you need to have all these other tools. And we feed all of as soon as you show up, like you're taken care of, you're fed. You will have to fast before the medicines. And from a nutritional point of view, fasting every once in a while can actually lengthen your life. It's actually a great practice, not for
Right.
weight loss, for just health of your body and all your systems. And then, so we have several prep work calls, one-on-one and group calls. So everyone gets to meet each other beforehand over Zoom. You have someone that's helping you with your intentions. And then we do the same thing afterwards in integration. We have multiple meetings, one-on-one and a group to see how everyone's doing with their integration and helping each other out. And everyone who goes through our program then gets graduated into the alumni chat group on Signal, and you get to meet with other first responders that have been through, and we have this whole community in a nutshell.
It sounds like that if you're willing to do the work and commit, the benefits. So I'll say the benefits outweigh the risks. What are the risks, Angela? Are there risks?
There are risks, actually. So to come back to the point of why we do it in Mexico, uh,
Yeah.
Because you have active duty firefighters and law enforcement agents who are very particular about breaking laws. By doing it in Mexico, they can still hold to the fact that they never broke any federal laws. So when you do it in Mexico, you you avoid the risk of getting in trouble legally because you're not doing it in a place where it's illegal. It's illegal in the States, and there are places you can do it in the States, and now you've broken a federal law. So by
Mhm.
going in Mexico, especially our law enforcement agents are no longer at risk of breaking laws. So
Okay.
that helps them out. But the other risk is this medicine is not for everybody. There are people with health concerns. When we send people through, they do a medical background check and a drug test beforehand for those of the people that maybe couldn't get off the opioids or other issues. So it is not for people who are taking certain medications and have certain health conditions, especially hypertension, some cardiac issues, or if you have a history of a schizoaffective disorder. Those are those are high risk situations that we will work with you to find alternatives, but
Okay.
it's not recommended that you use these medicines if you have, and there's other ones as well that we have a nurse practitioner, and we actually have a doctor on staff while we're doing the medicine that does a whole physical checkout right before you do
Okay.
the medicine.
That's great. Do I have to be concerned about becoming addicted to this medicine?
No, let me tell you, you're going to come out of here. Thank you for that intro.
There you
I
go.
forget about that part. No, like I said, when I came out of this, I remember thinking, no one's doing this shit for fun. It's not fun. It's painful and scary. And studies from Stanford, Johns Hopkins, and Harvard will tell you these are not addictive. They don't activate that part of the brain
Excellent. Excellent. Um,
unless you're a masochist.
no, no. Last time I checked, no.
Ugh.
That's so it's another modality that um I was reading, I think, with the Veterans Affairs. They have a division now. Maybe they've had it for a while. You would know more about it than I do. That's dedicated to the the use and the implementation of psychedelics and some of these therapies in treating veterans. Um,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and
So there's actually a lot more research out there on veterans than first responders because there's several nonprofits out there that serve veterans and they've been around for 10 plus years. And there's just so many, I mean, it's so prevalent and easy to recognize operator syndrome and the PTS that comes from being a soldier overseas. And I think that they just assume that that automatically transfers over to us. And what people don't remember is I am not at all belittling what soldiers have been through, but
of course
you
not.
get blown up, you're over there, and then you come home and you deploy maybe 3 times in your whole career. Police and fire have traumatic calls for 30 years, and they have to drive by that place where that kid died over and over again. They don't get to go home. They're constantly being exposed to it. So I would say soldiers' trauma is more acute, and I would say first responders' trauma is more chronic, and that may have a much different effect physiologically on your body for the longevity of being under that stress.
I think that it, it, it's not saying one is worse. That's the other thing we don't ever want to do is start comparing.
Oh, no, no, no. They broke
Oh,
their leg, and we have stress fractures.
yeah, yeah. I mean, so yeah, we don't ever want to get into that. But and I think you made that distinction really well. It's trauma is trauma.
So we're trying to do research with our first responders,
Uh-huh.
and maybe it does work the same, but I can tell you right now, like I said, that when you do talk therapy and meds, your success rate of no longer being considered clinically depressed is 20 to 30%. However, after they gave 2 rounds of psilocybin over the course of 6 months, they then checked them again 6 months later, and 67% of participants were no longer considered clinically depressed. So across the board scientifically, it's more than twice as effective, these medicines. For the general population, I don't know about veterans and first responders yet.
Yeah.
But again, the research is out there for first responders. We're hoping to get funding to do research with our first responders because we are the only nonprofit out there that I know of that does exclusively first responders.
when you said that, it made me think how, again, right? Because scientific studies, how much, I mean, I'm going to ask you a question that you can't possibly know the answer to, but let me just throw it out as a thought.
Yeah.
Because of the protocols and the requirements that you put in place prior to this pilgrimage, prior to this retreat.
Good word choice.
Hmm?
Good word choice. I like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh, it's the total effect. So, how much of the cleaning up the diet, removing the alcohol, practicing mindfulness, meditation, journaling, getting out in nature, getting your vitamin D, getting your physiology right? How
Your
much of
fiber.
getting your fiber? How much of doing all of that prior to that experience could be impacting
I'm let you finish.
the trauma,
I would say 95%.
mitigating the trauma that you're experiencing, or giving you better skill sets?
No, I know that number. I can tell
Oh
you
shit.
that, yeah, if you're doing all of these things, you are 90% on your way to healing yourself.
Okay.
This is just, I don't want to say it's an easy button because it's not easy.
No,
It's a highway to expedite it because it's a lot of work and we don't always have time to. I mean, if you think about all the stuff you're supposed to do every single day and you're supposed to stay hydrated and do mindfulness and play with your kids and do the dishes and the laundry, it's like I could really use a booster.
understood.
Yeah.
Understood. So that framed that nice for me. All right. It's and so I think that the weight of doing all those things, like the message needs to be like the psilocybin and the toad, that's going to condense years of meditation and mindfulness.
That's all it is. It really, because you can create neural plasticity and rewire your brain on your own with meditation, but it is a lot easier to dig a hole in water than in solid stone. It's going to take more time. So this
Right.
is just the easy way of doing, you're still doing the work.
Right.
It's just going to make the work a little easier.
I love it. Um, it just with that all being said, you know, this guidebook that you like, I have it on my desktop. Like, I don't have any plans of going anywhere, but the things that you setting intentions. I mean, you outline that this is a guidebook to get your life right.
It is if you stick to it and you own it, like you said, own
Yeah,
your part in it, and you're conscious and mindful in your intentions of I'm going to do it. And every day you wake up and you create the habit. It absolutely, and we have these tips on the website because we recognize some people don't have 5 days that they can be away from home or are afraid to leave the country and go to Mexico. And so we try to just be a resource for it. There is a lot of things you can do to help your mental state and your physical state without doing the medicine, but we are
right.
here if you want to try the medicine.
That's awesome. And because like you had said already, that it accelerates that process. The website, sirenproject.org,
Uh, thesirenproject.org.
thesirenproject.org. Um, can I say this has been awesome?
No, but thank you. It has been awesome.
I really, um, I know I don't know. And after speaking with you, I know just a little bit more, right? A little bit more. Certainly, I think the listener, like they're gonna pull over and get a pen out and just start taking some notes, because there is so much information and value in in your words today. Yeah, no, like I think we had a nice, like, healthy debate about things. And you know what I don't like? I don't like parroting. I don't like, it's just like every, it's okay to have a different
It is.
perspective. I think it's healthy to have a different
Socially, we've
perspective,
lost that. If you
right?
disagree with me, we can't be friends.
No,
And
right?
that's not okay. You need to constantly have your points of view challenged, and that's okay.
It's part of the thing I think that we've lost. Like there's no civil interaction. It's just either if you don't agree with me, fuck you.
Right.
How
And it's
to
very easy to do on social media because, you're not across from me to get punched in the mouth when you need it.
oh, it can happen. I know. Find out where you live. Holy smokes. Thank you so much for taking the time today. This has been an
Having
absolute
me.
pleasure.
Yes, and
Absolute
for this
pleasure.
platform to get the message out there, because that's the only way this ship's going to turn. You get
Right.
more people supporting it and changing the laws because it needs to be accessible for
No
everyone.
doubt. So it's thesirenproject.org website, all the information, a way to get in touch with you guys, ask questions, the whole 9 yards. Um, and on that site, if I remember correctly, there's a couple retreats coming
Yes,
up.
we do open retreats. So if you're not a first responder, we have a psilocybin 5-MeO retreat coming up. I want to say November well, that one's ayahuasca. I can't remember which one's which. We have an ayahuasca self-pay and a psilocybin self-pay open for anybody. There's only 8 spots. But if you're a first responder, that includes police, fire, EMS, and dispatch, or a spouse of. We send them because we believe in healing the whole family. We know the
Hmm,
family takes a hit a lot of times when your first responder is struggling, and
sometimes.
we want to heal the whole unit because they were your foundation and backing you up through the hard times.
Yeah, that's awesome. Any last words, Angela?
Um, we just sent our 53rd first responder through, so we're pretty excited to have
That is
sent
awesome.
so many people through in our juvenile existence here. We have kind of self-funded it thus far, so we're really, really hoping to find donations. I mean, if we can find, because we are a nonprofit and we are running on overtime pretty much.
Understood.
So if there's anyone
And I'll
who
put those links in the show notes. I'll put all those links, and on the website there is a way to donate on the website as well.
Thank you for that.
Oh, most certainly. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to figuring out a way how my nonprofit can help your nonprofit.
That'd be great. We're all finding each other. We've networked with
Yeah,
a lot of other nonprofits, and it's a great space to be in.
yeah, no doubt. It's a really beautiful time to be alive.
Yes, it is.
Thank you so much.
You.
And that is that, kid. Perfect. Are you kidding me? What is that?
Hour and a half.
Hour and a half, and just like